everybody, this is Gretchen the Green Lady, and today I have a special guest on the show, my brother Kevin.
Hi everybody, I am Kevin.
So anyway, Kevin is an amazing gardener. I tend to be a little better at my flower gardens, but Kevin is so good at vegetable gardens, and we're just going to ask him a myriad of questions. This gardening is kind of in our blood. My maiden name was Musser. He is still a Musser, and Musser means keeper of the field. So we have this in our blood. Anyway, so Kev, I got some questions for you.
Okay.
So your vegetable gardens, you were showing us pictures. Tell me some of your crops that you raise that you really enjoy and that are probably the ones you do best at.
Well, we grow a lot of green beans, red beets, peas.
Red beets, root vegetables.
We love potatoes, grow lots of potatoes.
Okay.
And the cabbages, your cold crops, those types of things. Yeah, we can grow them in the fall and they can stand some of the cool weather. Of course, things like peas will do a little better too.
Right.
Both in the spring and the fall due to their ability to, they like cool weather.
Why don't you tell us where you live so they know which zone that you're in?
Oh, we live in western Ohio, and it's a nice climate. It's been quite hot this summer, but not quite as warm as down here, and a little shorter season that we have.
So now tell me what your soil type is like. Here we tend to be sandier. We do have some clay. My particular property is not terribly full of clay, but we've got a good amount of sand. So do you have to amend your soils, and if so, why?
We have a heck of a crop of clay up there.
Okay.
It just seems to be pretty popular in our area.
Right.
But the area where our garden is located happens to be, historically speaking, the old Miami-Erie Canal that went from Cincinnati up to Cleveland, Erie area.
Right.
And so that has been filled in, and fortunately for us, it was some nice fill that was put in with that, some good topsoil.
Yes.
And since then, I have made a raised garden that's about a 16 by 80, and I bring in everything we can. We used to raise chinchillas, and so we would take all of the bedding from that and build compost with that.
So now you talked about raised beds. Tell our gardeners and our viewers, what is the purpose of a raised bed?
Well, for us, a raised bed is to get that soil level up high enough up above the regular ground so that can warm up a little bit sooner. That also drains a little bit better.
Yes.
And being that old canal back in there, water tends to sit.
Right. If you have wet soil, it is best to raise your soil level.
There's a lot of ways that you can do that. We happen to have an old school that was torn down, and they had all manner of old block, and I just used block for the edge.
As in cinder block?
Cinder blocks,
okay.
yes. Yeah, put that around them, and some of those blocks I would turn up so that the holes were in a vertical position, and I would plant herbs into those those holes.
Creative idea.
Things like what you're going to put on your pizza, we could grow all of that out there. Okay, oregano and thyme and lavender, other things like that.
Okay.
And so very nice.
Okay, when you amend your soils, that's a fancy word for if your soils need some help, if they don't provide enough good nutrients as they are, you need to amend them with peat moss or with manures or compost, which is a very good avenue, which, you know, we've shared all these with you. What did you find you most worked well for you in amending your soils?
We found a neighbor who was collecting the town's leaves for years. And in the fall, when all these leaves would come off and these guys would vacuum those up, he would pile them in a field, and they were breaking down, and I would get that as compost, and some of it was 4 and 5 years old, so it was very beautiful and very light and fluffy.
Well broken down.
And in addition to that, the trees that are on our property, all of those leaves go into the garden.
Okay, so now, do you purchase things like peat moss? Do you purchase things like manures? You know, you can get a pretty well broken down manure. Or what about mushroom compost?
Well, we don't have access to mushroom compost,
okay.
But we do have several other options available. You can buy topsoil if you want. We happen to have at the next town over from us, they take all of their lawn clippings, bushes, everything. They grind this up, and they have mountains of compost.
And do they make that available to the public?
Yes. Yes.
For free?
No, not for
So
free,
you
but for very
purchase-
reasonable.
Okay.
They have a payloader. I can go buy a scoop for $15, which is
what a good
going to be about
idea.
a ton and a half.
And so let's tell the people why that is a good amendment. What are the nutrients in there? I mean, I'm thinking of one in particular, but
Well, I'm looking for humus that's very bioavailable to
Okay.
plants to utilize, and it also gives me body in that soil. And
is there a nitrogen
nitrogen sources?
are good from the lawn clippings, or if those are too far decomposed?
Well, there would be some nitrogen in there, but I do want it decomposed, because if it's not decomposed by the time I get it, my plants can't use that, and it draws the nitrogen out.
Yes.
So, and put quite a bit of that mulch in, and it has some of that perhaps needed to decompose more, because some of my plants were a bit nitrogen deficient. So I had to pay attention. You have to watch and see what your plants look like.
Yes. So Kevin, I wanted to ask you about some little tricks that you use in your garden. Kevin has some great ideas, and I've covered some of those, but it's good to hear how someone else does it as well.
We tried something just starting last year. I have a lot of cardboard from pallets.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought, wow, what about using that? And so I went over to the next town, and I got a trailer load of this mulch compost. And I laid the cardboard down, and I covered it with that mulch to use as a natural weed suppressant.
Yes.
And so we would lay that down, and then in between the cardboard sheets, we would plant rows. Or if I wanted to have rows closer than what a sheet of that cardboard would be, I would cut that, and we would custom design that.
So the cardboard then in time will break down.
Yes.
But for the start of your season, which is typically when your weeds are going to start, he suppressed them, and he was still able to use that.
It's worked very, very well, and it allowed us to get some of those seedlings that aren't as competitive, such as red beets. Okay, they can get off to a good start. Now, you'll have a few weeds in the row, but you'll be able to manage that much more easily. And at the same time, you're adding some fertility to your garden, because I've got both the cardboard and the mulch on top. And each year I'm going to put another layer down. So,
and you know, that can also be done with newspaper. I've seen it done where you can layer newspaper, and it creates a barrier with that weed seed. The weed seed cannot germinate, and you begin to, the seedlings that you want growing have a better start.
And the other point to remember is this, is that every time you stir up that soil, you create the opportunity for those weed seeds that can sit in there for years and years to germinate. So by covering that, we're actually preventing new weeds from coming up.